What is up, guys? It's Ethan Ryder with Soccer for Us Kids, U.S Kids. I'm here with the 8th explainer video today for you guys, and today I'm going to talk about the inflation of transfer fees and the difference between transfers and loans. So let's get started. I'm going to talk about inflation of transfer fees first. So inflation of transfer fees happens because of the revenue that teams get nowadays. Teams have a lot more money from different deals that they can accomplish. So sometimes they'll have deals with things like Adidas and deals with things like Nike, and they'll get a lot of money from these deals. They get more and more every year just because there's more money floating around in the soccer business, which is actually what people think it is becoming. It's starting to really become a business where there's just players going from place to place with a lot of money floating around. And some of the money that they get is from TV revenues, like TV deals, because the Premier League is shown in the USA, and they get a lot of money from these TV deals. And things like the Champions League, they'll get money from that because it's on the TV. And just everything that they compete in, they're getting a lot more money from. And so these inflation of transfer fees are happening because these teams have a lot more money to buy players, and so they'll spend more money just to get the player that they want. So let's go on to transfers and loan. A transfer is permanent. It's like a trade from one team to another, and it is not going to change once that transfer has been agreed. It can't be changed, and it's not going to come back. And so it's kind of like a trade in NBA basketball. Let's say in NBA basketball, the Cleveland Cavaliers have LeBron James, and the Golden State Warriors have Stephen Curry, and they want to trade the two players. Cleveland Cavaliers will give up LeBron James, and the Golden State Warriors will give up Stephen Curry. And these two players will go to opposite teams. There's no money involved. In soccer, it's a little different. In soccer, there'll be two different teams, and let's say that the Cleveland Cavaliers want Steph Curry. Instead of trading LeBron James for him, they'll just take money, and they'll say, we'll give you $50 million for Stephen Curry. And then if Golden State Warriors accept, then Stephen Curry goes to the other side. It's a little bit different, but it makes a little bit of sense. In transfers for soccer, you use money instead of players. And there's not, sometimes every now and then you'll have players that come here and go there, but a lot of the times there's not player for player trades. Sometimes you'll give a player on loan and cash, but that's a little bit different, and I'll get onto that later when I talk about loans. Transfers are a permanent deal, like I said. So when you go through a transfer, it's a very complicated process for two teams. First off, you have to show interest in a player, and you have to inquire about them. So someone like Liverpool, we're going to talk about Liverpool's transfer deal for Virgil van Dijk, where they got from Southampton. So Liverpool first, so this is how it works. Liverpool are interested in Virgil van Dijk. Southampton have him on this side. And so as of now, nothing's happened. But at the beginning of a transfer, Liverpool have to inquire about Virgil van Dijk and inquire about his availability. And Southampton can answer with multiple ways. They can answer with multiple things that they want to say to the inquiry. They can say, Virgil van Dijk's not available, Virgil van Dijk's available at the right price, and then you can name a price. There's different things that they can say. So Liverpool inquire about Virgil van Dijk. Southampton say, you can have Virgil van Dijk for the right price. What do you think you want to give to him? Liverpool say, hey, we'll give you blah, blah, blah. We'll give you $50 million. Southampton say, no, that's not enough. So they have to go back and think about a different price that they want to give him. So let's say Liverpool say, we'll give you $75 million for Virgil van Dijk. It doesn't jump that often, but that is the amount that they ended up giving, so I'm going to jump to that value. So Liverpool say, we'll give you $75 million. Southampton say, okay, we agree to that deal. It's not over yet. So they've agreed a fee for Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk, sometimes what he does is sometimes a player before the transfer fee has been agreed, they'll agree terms with, like, Virgil van Dijk will agree terms with Liverpool before the fee has even been agreed. But sometimes once the fee is agreed, then the team have to agree wages, and they are allowing so what will happen is the transfer fee is agreed. Southampton now are going to give they're going to give Virgil van Dijk the opportunity to talk to Liverpool for wages. And they say, you can have Virgil van Dijk for wages in a contract. And so Liverpool come, and that's agreeing terms. And so Virgil van Dijk goes over to Liverpool. And Virgil van Dijk will end up agreeing a contract for something like £200,000 a week, because it's in England, so they use pounds. And so he'll get £200,000 a week for 5 years. And he'll sign this contract, and once he signs the contract, he is a Liverpool player. And now he can play for the Liverpool club. So that's a little bit of how a transfer works, and that's permanent. If we move on to loans, loans are part-time. Loans can have 3 different ways about them. The first way that a loan can be is just a loan. That's all it is. The player goes and plays for a team and then comes back when his loan's over. The second one is a loan with an option to buy. So that depending on how good the player does on loan, the team has an option to buy for a certain amount of money. The third way is a loan with an obligation to buy. And this is interesting because sometimes it's used to get around different paying for wages and different things that happen during the world. And PSG used this in Mbappe, and we'll talk about that a little later on. So with loans, the first one is just a loan where you send them out. So loans are normally for younger players that aren't quite getting enough time on an elite squad, but they want them for the future. So someone like Liverpool, who is an elite squad in the Premier League, are not going to exactly want to have this player on their ranks because his skill level is not being used and he's not getting better every single day. So they send him on loan to a lower tier team, like a championship team who is 1 tier below the Premier League. And sometimes, most of the time, they'll have a little part in the loan contract that has to make sure that the team plays him a certain amount of games. So if they don't play him a certain amount of games, then the loan fee is a little bit higher. It's just like transfers that there is a fee for a loan. However, it's normally a lot lower because they only have a player for so long. It can either be 6 months or a year, and sometimes it's even 2 years, depending on what the teams want to deal with. And this is normally for a young player. Sometimes it is older players. The second way was a loan with an option to buy. This is in case a team doesn't really want the player. It's not normally a loan player. It's normally a player that hasn't been performing to the best of his abilities, but the team is not sure they want to buy him yet. So they'll loan him out first with a loan fee, and then they'll put on let's say a 14 million option to buy at the end of his loan. If the player does well enough on his loan, the team with the option to buy will go out and buy that player for $14 million, and they'll make the loan permanent. And that's how that one works. It can become permanent, but it is still unpermanent, and it is still a part-time agreement until they use that option to buy, trigger that option to buy release clause. Another loan is a loan with the obligation to buy. A loan with an obligation to buy is normally used for a team that doesn't want to pay his wages at first, and it's a way to agree a deal. If a team wants to have a player on loan, but they don't want to pay his wages for the first year, but they do want to buy him in the end, then they'll ask the team, if you pay his wages for the first year, then we'll buy him from you for this amount of money the next year. And that's something that happened with PSG. PSG wanted to buy Mbappe, but due to fair play rules, they weren't exactly allowed to buy him because they could only pay so much money to players until they reached a certain point that they're over fair play judgment. And so instead of buying Mbappe, they loaned Mbappe for about a year. So they loaned him for a year, and then they had an obligation to buy him for a bunch of money. And so this obligation to buy means at the end of his loan, you have to buy him, and he is now permanently a part of your club. So this is a little way to get around different fees and money that they have to pay. So another thing that I was talking about is a release clause. A release clause is a part of a transfer. We're going back to transfers now. A release clause is something in a player's contract. So if there is a player's contract, sometimes they'll sign to a release clause. This actually happened with Emre Can at Liverpool. They wouldn't sign a release clause because that means that other teams have a bigger say in how if the player will leave or not. And so Emre Can never agreed to a deal and has ended up signing for Juventus as a free agent. A release clause is something in a player's contract. Let's say Emre Can does sign a release clause in his contract, and he signs a $50 million release clause. The way this works is if another team comes and says, we will trigger that release clause and pay you $50 million, Liverpool has to let him talk to the other team for wages and things like that. So most of the time, teams want to have no release clause in a player's contract if they're very good. Because in that case, you can ask for however much money that you want, and the teams can't talk to the player until they agree a fee. So thank you for watching. That is the 8th explainer video talking about transfer fees and transfers and loans. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hit that like button if you did, and remember to hit that subscribe button, and remember to ask questions if you're ever confused. Thank you guys for watching.